All right, with that, let's call this meeting to order. We're here for the public hearing to discuss the Small Cities Program application. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are here tonight to hold a public hearing to discuss the 2015 Small Cities Program application and to solicit citizen input about renovations to the Virginia Connolly residence and the Dr. Owen Murphy apartments. This is for paving and for a new roof. And with that, we will open up the hearing to the public. And would anyone like to speak to this?
Yes, if I may. Thank you. My name is Larry Wagner. I'm a consultant working with the town and the Housing Authority to submit the application. As you said, the public hearing tonight is to solicit public comment on the application. The funding is from a program called the Small Cities Community Development Block Grant Program, which are federal funds that originate at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and for cities over 50,000 go to them directly. For cities under 50,000, such as Simsbury, they come to each state to be dispersed on a method that that state elects to do, and Connecticut has what's called a competitive model. The applications are due April 10th this year. One of the requirements is to have a public hearing to discuss the project and to have public input. And projects can be submitted in a variety of different program types, from infrastructure to public housing to housing rehabilitation of private owners to a variety of different things. And the town has proceeded with the Housing Authority as one of the eligible type projects. The town itself has no predominantly low and moderate income census tracts, which would rule out quite a few of the eligible categories. The application is being submitted for the amount of $800,000. And by the way, this is not the first program the town has done. Many, many years ago, they did a housing rehabilitation program to provide housing rehab funds to eligible property owners throughout the town and to fix up their private homes. And it was based on your income, so it was considered a low and moderate income project. And in 2006, you received funds to do renovations at the Housing Authority. And over the years, obviously, renovations don't keep forever. And the Housing Authority is now proposing to replace the roof on Virginia Kelly.
Connolly.
I'm sorry. And Owen Murphy to do major site work, street paving, sidewalks, ADA curb cuts, things like that. The application said it's due April 10th. It has quite a variety of different categories in it. But the application is basically considered, the state basically considers things in the areas of the need for the project, which is letters from the residents, letters from the town, letters from the public works. The feasibility of the project, is it ready to go? Does the applicant have a capacity to carry it out? Do you have professional staff? Have you had any major audit findings? And its fair housing commitment, which you, if you haven't done so already, will be passing a bunch of fair housing resolutions and ADA type things.
We've done those. Yeah.
That's basically it. I mean, I don't have this go over every. That's the application, by the way. I won't have to read that tonight.
No.
So I don't want to do that. So, but other than that, I'd be happy to take questions, or if anyone in the public has something to say.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone here in the public like to speak to this? Seeing none. Does anyone on the board have questions for Mr. Wagner at this point?
Mr. Wagner, what is the time frame for this hearing application? When will they find out if they get it or not?
In the last, well, once it goes in April 10th. In the past few years, the governor has announced August, September. Mm-hmm. The state has said their target date for this year is August 1st.
And when?
So hopefully they stay on track.
And how soon after announcing do they expect the projects to begin?
Well, when you submit, the Housing Authority has already expended funds for plans to be ready to go. Obviously, if you're going to do site work, you're not going to put it out in November. Mm-hmm. You're not going to do it. But there are some things they'll want to at least bid it after the first of the year. You don't get the funds on August 1st. You get a blank contract. Mm-hmm. Then you execute that locally with legal opinion, set up a bank account, and then you send it back. And it takes a couple months to get that through the process. Unlike state bond funds, which are available the day after it's approved by the Bond Commission, you cannot encumber these funds until it comes back, because they're federal funds, it comes back countersigned from the state. Mm-hmm. So the governor's announcement is a good indication, but you can't actually expend and incur any costs until after it comes back.
Because of the nature of these projects, they seem to be warm weather projects rather than cold weather projects.
It's not interior renovation, it's
Right.
exterior.
So the Housing Authority can anticipate another winter of craters in the,
If they really do keep to the August 1 timetable, you could fast track it and bid it, you just could not award it until the contract came back from the state.
right.
Any other questions from members of the board? Any other questions from the public? We've been going for 7 minutes. I'm inclined to wait a minute or two just to make sure no one else shows up, but we'll close the hearing and wait a minute, and then we'll close the hearing just to make sure no one else is coming.
In the interest of filling time, this is the second year in a row we've done this. in
It
terms
is.
of- So we've all kind of had the questions out there, and we have discussed this before, so hopefully we get it this time. Second time's the charm, right?
We hope.
So,
Because they're nearly desperate now.
yes.
For the, yeah.
All right, well, I'll take a motion then to close the hearing on the Small Cities Grant Resolution.
I move to close the hearing on the Small Cities Grant
Second. So we
application.
have a motion by Cheryl, second by Mr. Kelly. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
This hearing is closed. We will now move on. There is a hearing for the Personnel Subcommittee, and that is being chaired by Chris. And we will let the Personnel Subcommittee take control of the meeting.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to put on chairs for members of the public that are here, both, yes, Mike, that would be very nice, I appreciate it. Both our agenda as well as a document that provides some history and frame. So I'm calling the meeting to order, and we'll start again with Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So Cheryl and Sean, you have copies in front of you.
Yep.
We had just put together a few pieces of information that we thought would provide a historical context, as well as also some education in terms of what would actually be involved in a Charter Revision Commission if we ever were to get to that point. The purpose of this meeting is to solicit public input on Simsbury's form of government, and similar to other hearings, we'll provide 5 minutes per person, and any individual can return to speak even longer if they want to. The historical overview is at the January public audience on the first selectman's salary. Some of the people who spoke did include speakers presenting suggestions on the first selectman versus town manager form of government. And so we were asked by the current first select person to hold a hearing on this. And just a couple of documents that we've put together is previous charter revision history, just a comparison of some towns in terms of their form of government, and then statutory guidelines for charter revision. And we'll just take a few minutes to walk through these. This first page is a grid, and with information provided by Tom and other members of town staff, and I appreciate all the research that was done on this, Tom, of charter revisions from 1985. So we're just going to walk through this and highlight each of these items. The first one that we are providing an update on is 1985. A note is it was a charter revision that was prompted by a petition to change the town manager form of government. That Charter Revision Commission did review the merits of town manager versus elected first selectman form of government. In their final report, they did not comment on changes from elected first selectman in the final report. So they reviewed the issue but made no recommendations. The next Charter Revision Commission was 1992, in which they submitted their report. They did review the merits of the town manager versus elected first selectman. They specifically recommended retaining the first selectman form of government in their final report. It's just worth noting is that is the Charter Revision Commission that created the separate police commission from the Board of Selectmen. The next group was 1994 to 1995. There was actually not a review of the town manager versus first selectman during that charter revision. It focused almost exclusively on the town meeting. It did not comment on a change in its final report. It did make multiple changes to the town meeting at that point. The next Charter Revision Commission was 1999. It was actually prompted by a 1997 Town Manager Study Committee, which collected data and observations on the town manager form of government, but that committee did not recommend change from first elected form at that point. The Charter Revision Commission at that time did review the merits of the town manager versus elected first selectman, and in their report, they did not comment on a change from elected first selectman. It did identify multiple changes to the management authority of the first selectman, however. The next actual commission was 2004 to 2007. They did review the merits of the town manager versus elected first selectman form of government. They did not comment on any changes from the elected first selectman in their final report. And then we had the 2010 to 2012 charter revision. It did review the merits of the town manager versus elected first selectman form of government, and they did not comment on a change from elected first selectman in their final report. It did include a revision to Section 502, duties of the first selectman, to include with approval from the Board of Selectmen for the first selectman to appoint another town officer as personnel director. So that's the historical overview of each of the charter revision commissions. What we just did want to provide on the next page was just some comparisons of different towns in the 18,000 to 29,000 population range, and whether they have an elected chief executive officer or an appointed chief elected executive officer. And you have that there for your review. And then the final thing we did want to present, because any desire to change the current form of government would require a charter revision commission, is we just wanted to provide some overview of what the statutes are guiding both the initiation of a charter revision commission and their work. So this first page is speaking to General Statutes, Chapter 99, Section 7 to 187 through 194, which speaks to the initiation of a charter revision commission by a Board of Selectmen. The first step is initiation of amendments to the charter. By 2/3 vote of the Board of Selectmen, town can adopt a resolution initiating charter revision. The second step is the commission is to be appointed within 30 days. The first bullet is within 30 days of the adoption of the initiation, the Board of Selectmen shall by resolution appoint a charter revision commission. It can consist of 5 to 15 members. Only 50% plus one can be a bare majority, may be members of one party. And an example of that is if you have 7 members on the commission, 4 could be from one party. Issue number 3 is the appointing authority may direct the commission. The Board of Selectmen may direct the commission to consider recommended changes or specific topics to be addressed in the existing charter. The commission may consider other items for inclusion in a proposed amended charter. The commission is required to comment on each recommendation forwarded to it by the Board of Selectmen. And then the deadline for the commission report, the Board of Selectmen resolution must specify when the commission will submit a draft report, which cannot be later than 16 months from the date of the appointment of the commission. And then the final piece here are some guidelines relative to commission proceedings, which we actually have on the next page. So for any charter revision commission that's coming together, these are just issues that would be statutory guidelines to that initiation of the effort. A, the commission must submit its draft report to the town clerk, who in turn submit it to the appointing authority. The appointing authority must hold at least one public hearing on the draft report and must host its last public hearing not later than 45 days after the submission of the draft report to such town clerk. Not later than 15 days after its last hearing, the appointing authority must make its recommendations to the commission for changes in the draft report it deems desirable. D, if the appointing authority makes no recommendation within the 15-day period, the draft report shall be considered final, and the appointing authority shall act on such report. E, if the appointing authority makes recommendations, the commission shall confer with the appointing authority and may amend or reject such recommendations. In either case, the commission shall make its final report to the appointing authority not later than 30 days after receiving such recommendations. And then F, within 50 days of receiving the final report from the commission, The appointing authority by a majority vote of the full membership may approve or reject the proposed amended charter or separate provisions thereof. And then G, the appointing authority, if it approves the final report, must hold a referendum within 15 months of its approval of the proposed amended charter. So that really concludes what we wanted to present. It provides an overview of what is involved in initiating and the work of a Charter Revision Commission. So with that said, I'll turn it over to public input. And again, I would just ask that each of you take 5 minutes. If you don't get to conclude what you want to say in 5 minutes, you can come back after other people have spoken. I'll start with John, and then Joan will go with you. If you would just give your name and address when you present.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm John Carroll, 31 Terry's Plain Road. And if I may, a little history. We briefly have history in this document. This letter is a Charter Revision Commission draft statement on professional management. Date May 10, 1995. Charter Revision Commission recommends that the Board of Selectmen establish the position of Chief Administrative Officer and revise the description of duties for the first Selectman to include only those responsibilities of Chief Executive Officer. The Commission recognizes that the increasing complexity of town government requires the expertise of professional management. The Chief Administrative Officer would be responsible for the day-to-day management of the town's affairs, while the first Selectman, citizen legislator, as Chief Executive Officer, would implement and direct the policies as established by the Board of Selectmen. By relieving the first Selectman of the management responsibilities as defined in the current charter, more qualified candidates may seek office of the first Selectman. And after that are all of the chapters and sections in the charter which this would affect. We segue now to the Charter Revision Committee. And this is the file, ladies and gentlemen. There is a great deal of research in this file on the subject of First Selectman, but more importantly, because First Selectman form of government is only half of what we're talking about here. The other half is the form of government. Our form of government is Selectmen Town Meeting. We have the Chief Administrative Officer. So the question here is, what do we have to do to integrate the administrative functions of the town of Simsbury with the legislative and executive functions of the town of Simsbury? And is a town meeting form of government appropriate today when so few people attend the town meeting? So this document is, or this file is available in perhaps the library, but it's all here. I would be happy to loan it to you. Should you decide to form any kind of study committee, let me suggest to you that this file become a review, because I think we will find in this file a great many things that are still applicable today in making the kinds of decisions that we want to make. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, John.
Appreciate that, John, thank you.
If you want to leave that file with me, I can make a copy and have it returned to you.
Joan, you want to speak next?
Yeah, I didn't know he's done.
Chris, do you want to interact with the speaker?
Well, if you have specific questions for John, yes, that would be.
If you want to sit down and work on it a little bit with me,
Okay.
we can look and see what's appropriate.
Thank you, John.
Just to note, I've asked Mr. Carroll for this file, and I'll have a copy made and available to the committee.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Okay, Joan?
Joan Coe, 26 Whitcomb Drive. I am running for first selectman with a position in instituting town manager form of government. I cannot understand how this administration is holding a public hearing, quote, to receive comment concerning the town of Simsbury's form of government, end quote. This is not rocket science. The Board of Selectmen should vote to convene a charter revision with the purpose of changing the charter to have a town manager form of government, replacing the first selectman. The Charter Revision Commission is the proper authority to determine the form of government, not the Board of Selectmen. The public should be hearing from the Board of Selectmen as to their position on the form of government, not vice versa, since you cannot change the form of government. Leadership is making choices. We don't need charrettes, surveys, or hearings to convene a Charter Revision Commission. What is your position on this issue, since the form of government has been discussed over decades? Town manager or not? It's time the public hears from you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Joan. Would anyone else like to speak? Hello, Krista, how are you?
Krista Menzel, 20 Laurel Drive. There have been a lot of charter revision commissions that have never taken the step to change the form of government because we like our town and we think we like our form of government. But over the years, the piecemeal changes have been made by the Board of Selectmen in the kinds of duties and kinds of employees that are there to help the first selectmen perform their duties. And I think it's time we stopped with this piecemeal attempt to have the kind of government that works efficiently and that we would like. And we need to go back to a charter revision commission and really discuss the form of government that we want, as the two previous speakers have said, and make the complete change. This piecemeal approach is what got us into trouble this last round.
Thank you, Krista. Would anyone else like to speak? May I have a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nay? So carries. All right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your comments. And at this point, we would discuss any possible action or recommendations we want to make to the Board of Selectmen. We are on the agenda to have an update on this hearing on tonight's meeting. So any thoughts, recommendations?
You sound like you're getting ready to say something funny.
I was, and then I thought, oh, I talked too much.
So you looked at me because I talk less? We just got done with the budget. Are you kidding?
I find myself listening to these good people who came in to give us their opinion, and I really appreciate that. I am persuaded by what they have said, that, I agree, this piecemeal type change over time does not work, and that we need to solidify our town's objectives and purpose and find a way forward that eliminates this ambiguity that we've been dealing with. And I think as a board, we have been trying to build up the professional management of the town, and I think, that we've done a responsible job doing that, and that we have tried to protect the interests of the town in every way we possibly can by assuring, succession planning and competitive salaries and all those good things. But we still need to work on that piece at the top, and I think it's time that we do that. And I agree with all of you that it may be past time to do that, but I would certainly not object to a charter revision commission to deal with that subject. And there may be other things that a
Right.
charter revision commission can deal with also that we haven't discussed as a board of selectmen or on this committee, that are worth, changing at this point too. And we should open that up for the town to have an open conversation about
Yep.
that. And I am certainly in support of that.
I agree. I mean, I'll go a little bit further. I think we're obligated at this point to convene a charter revision commission for a number of reasons, but most importantly, when you take a step back and look at the job description or lack thereof of the first selectman today, it's really not in tune with, the worlds that we all deal with here,
Doing,
especially,
yeah.
your expertise, Chris, and, in the HR space, it's kind of a ambiguous job description, which isn't a good idea when you're trying to run a town, and it's worked. We've had good people in the seat. We have good people sitting in the seat now, and we've been lucky, but I think we need to do a better job of defining it at the very least. If that leads us to a town manager, then so be it. If we keep the form of government that we have today because this town thinks that that's the right thing to do, then so be it as well. To Mrs. Coe's point, we all probably have a different position on this, but it's not up to this board either. It's up to the citizens when they vote on the charter, once the recommendation comes up, as we did a couple of years ago, what the change is or isn't. So I think it's important that people have an opportunity to have that discussion. It's a long process. It's a time-intensive process. This board obviously would have input in the composition and then at least some of the scope, obviously not all of it, and I think that's important. Some of the things that guide my opinion on this is we need to be extremely thoughtful in what we do at the end of this, because it's not just, as John said, a town manager or not discussion. What do we do with the Board of Finance? I, for one, am not in favor of anything that weakens the power of the Board of Finance. I think the Board of Finance is, while they're challenging sometimes to deal with, that's a good thing. That's a healthy check and balance that I think leads to better outcomes, and I think we would be foolish to undo any of that. I think we've got a lot of professionalism in this building, and again, strengthening that via the charter is a good idea, whether we go to town manager or not. So I think there's a lot of different things that we need to think about here. So I think we ought to bring this to the Board of Selectmen this evening to start the process of convening a charter revision commission. Not necessarily this evening, but in short order. I just want to make sure that we consult with town attorney on updated statutes, because I seem to think that there's an updated statute from the last time in terms of scope.
Yeah.
And he's looking into that now. I
Yeah.
raised that with him at Nancy's request
Yeah.
earlier this week, and he's double checking it. Right
Okay.
now, it's our understanding that the Charter Revision Commission could, in addition to addressing the points that it's asked to address by the Board of Selectmen, and I think Chris's summary of that is entirely accurate. Our charter currently still provides that the Charter Revision Commission can go beyond that and consider issues of their own choosing.
Good.
So there are some, and we've asked for verification of that from Bob, but that we should have a complete picture of that if we don't already in the very near future.
Good, and I hope that's the case, because I think that's a good idea, because we're not going to come up with all of it here. We need,
Right.
that needs to, Sherry said, that needs to be open for additional input, with boards and commissions and other spots in the charter. There's always language to clean up, as another set of eyes look at it, so I think that's good. And Chris, from our standpoint, I don't know how you want to proceed with this, but I think we need to, either at this level or the Board of Selectmen level, define our desire for scope beyond looking at form of government and town manager or not. It's, because in hindsight, this will be my second swing at a charter revision commission setting up in this board. Perhaps if we defined scope a little bit better last time, I think we you'll learn from prior challenges. So I think we did a good job with the prior charter changes, but in learning from it, I think we could have given some better guidance to have perhaps better outcomes. So I think that's important.
So to that question, first of all, I would agree with all the comments that both of you have made. So how we discuss this with the Board of Selectmen and how this gets initiated if a recommendation is voted on becomes important for two reasons. One, we need to have a thoughtful scope. And then the second is once you actually name doing this, you've got the clock ticking in terms of the parameters. So, so I don't know, so I'm thinking there's an update to the board tonight in some capacity, and then there's a process to put together a formal recommendation that would be viewed or considered at a future meeting. Who do we want to recommend, and how do we want to recommend that process go? As a subcommittee, do we want to take some accountability to draft a statement that can be reviewed at a future meeting? Do you prefer a subgroup of the Board of Selectmen? What makes sense, Cheryl, from your point of view?
Well, I wasn't on the board last time when this was convened. Were there specific recommendations made the last time we convened a Charter Revision Commission?
From the Board of Selectmen?
From the Board of Selectmen? I mean, were there requests for scope or?
So I wasn't on that part. I was on the approving part, not on the defining part, so.
I don't know specifically about
Tom,
the last one.
maybe you can help us here with the, I don't know.
The answer to that is no. I don't recall the Board of Selectmen drafting specific objectives. During the course of the charter revisions meetings, they did ask, certainly town staff, and I know that some of you all participated in the process, but there was not a specific directive.
And there are times it's been initiated where there have been very specific areas that have been asked to be explored. So I think we have the discretion of both, and I think there's a historical precedent for both.
That's what I was wondering, is how we set up, our request, if that's been done before. And, I mean, do we have, and what if there's a board or a commission that has found a change that they would like to implement?
Well, and for example,
do they come to us and say, look, we can't work with this the way it is,
It's entirely possible to set it up that way. Because no directive was given by the Board of Selectmen before, for example, there was a change in the relationship between the Design Review Board and planning, as I recall. That came up during the course of the hearings. It was brought forward by town staff on behalf of the boards. We can certainly take an approach that tries to identify as many of those issues earlier, and so that you start with more cards in the deck, if you will.
Well, my only thought in doing that is that if we are more specific with our requests, I think the public will have an easier time engaging in the process because we will have put our issues on the table. And so if somebody has a particular concern, that they will, already be engaged in that process because they'll know it's coming. They won't have to be following each, commission update or whatever they're, to know whether they're going to talk about the issue that you're particularly concerned about.
The other thing, Cheryl, is what I've seen a number of charter revision commissions do is they hold a hearing fairly quickly to ask for public input for areas to take a look at. Now, those are all commissions that have had the freedom to pursue issues outside of what may have been given to them by the Board of Selectmen. So there is that process that happens reasonably quickly as well. I mean, it could be that what we're doing this evening is really doing an update and indicating that this is an area that we're going to be making a recommendation on. We could ask Tom to check in with the town attorney relative to the scoping. We do have actually examples of the provisions that initiated the charter revision, and I know at least one has language in there in terms of what the Board of Selectmen wanted looked at. We could look at a few of those, and then what we could do is come back at a next meeting or a future meeting with a more concrete recommendation. Tonight what we do is we get some input from the board, and then we take accountability to come back with kind of the next resolution that would be considered. If that makes sense.
I think that does make a lot of sense, yeah. I agree with that, as long as, I mean, and again, I presume we're going to move rather rapidly with that, because,
Right.
that we started, I know we have a lot going on, but this one's kind of important, and, with that, looking at So we form it, we have 30 days to appoint it, and then we also have to give them a deadline. So thinking about, our anticipated scope of work that we're going to give them is important when we set
Yep.
that deadline, because 16 months sounds like it's way too long, and 3 sounds like it's too short, because you gotta have time, but I don't know what the right number is in there, so
Yep.
getting, having some discussion and thought around that, because if we're just going to talk about town manager or form of government, maybe it's, a shorter window, but if we're going to talk about boards and commissions and other language and, how we, permanent positions in the charter and all this other stuff, then perhaps that adds months to it. So we've got
Right.
to give them time to get the work done.
So we could, the conversation tonight could be further input on scope, timing,
Yep.
those types of issues.
I think that's
And I-
fair.
And I think we all agree we would be coming back very quickly with the
Right.
Yeah.
formalization of the process, yeah.
Okay.
Are we the correct board for that to be coming from? The recommendations, or how does that? But I mean, we would make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen would,
I would suggest,
Recommend the-
because you all are, this is more just a matter of practicality, you all are already downstream on this
Yeah.
thing. But it would probably make sense for the full board to empower you to undertake this later on this evening, if that's what you want to do. And if I may, I will also be in contact with town council to see if because he's done this not only for Simsbury, but for other towns as well, and see see what kind of advice he can give you all in terms of, Sean raised a great question, what's a reasonable amount of time for getting this done? He may have some examples.
Because it's a lot of his time as well. I mean, in terms of drafting language and
Right.
doing research from a statute.
That's right, and he sat with every, he attended every charter revision commission meeting, I think, in the last one, so he is heavily involved in this process.
Yeah. Okay.
So Tom, that language of empowering tonight, what does that look like? Is that a formal recommendation,
I
an
think it would
informal?
just be a motion by someone on the full board to authorize the personnel subcommittee to undertake a proposal for a charter revision commission.
Okay. And do we need to have a proposal from here to the Board of Selectmen relative to that, or let that be an outgrowth of the conversation at the board?
Well, I think, as I understood, I thought you guys were proposing that you'd work on an initial proposal.
Yes.
If that's, I was trying to capture that piece for you,
Yep.
so that they would authorize you to make that initial proposal to them.
So this evening, we're going to recommend that they let us run with it.
Yep.
If you want a formal vote here, I'm fine with that, if we want to take
we're going to
it.
recommend to the Board of Selectmen that this committee start reviewing the scope, or,
Yeah,
But I would.
okay.
Research and draft a scope document for,
consideration for the full
For
board.
consideration by the whole board.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Sean, if you want, or Cheryl, why don't we have a motion here?
Go ahead. Yours will sound better.
Okay. I move that the Personnel Subcommittee request that the Board of Selectmen empower this committee to examine, to initiate a charter revision scope, or, I don't know how.
Research and develop.
Develop a charter revision scope committee in anticipation of recommendation to the Board of Selectmen for a full board recommendation for a charter review, or a charter revision committee.
Okay.
I second what she just said.
Any further discussion? All who approve?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? So carried. With that, I'll take a motion to end the Personnel Subcommittee meeting.
Move that.
Second?
All approve?
Aye.
Any against? Carries. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
20 minutes.
Because we have noticed it at 7.
Right.
We noticed it at 7.
I just want to make sure,
We have a recess, yeah. Well, it's the end.